All right, we're back with the second episode here with Cory on his race to Drake. Thanks for being back here again, Cory.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
So it's been about a month since we last chatted and trying to get caught up a little bit on your defending your title in the Masters 800 at Drake Relays. Tell us what's happened in the last month.
Yeah, so basically since we were together 4 or 5 weeks ago, whatever it was, I think I had even talked a little bit in that first episode about kind of getting close to maybe a down period or like a recovery period. So after we got done, finished up that week of training, and then took about 5 days off.
Oh, wow.
Is what it looked like.
And what's 5 days off mean? What did you do?
I did nothing.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I remember, and this was something, physically and from a mental standpoint that Jeff and I had kind of talked about last year leading up to Drake, is he's like, there's going to be these strategic off periods, and it's really important, like, to do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, no cardio, no push-up, like literally nothing. I mean, obviously, I don't think you sit around on the couch like eating
Were you just
Cheetos.
pacing a lot?
Yeah, like all day.
Like, what do you do with all that energy?
Right. It's like, what do I do now that I'm not like being physically active for an hour plus each day? So yeah, the 5 days, as trying as what they were last year, and I think even last year, I had some periods that were 7 to 10 days.
Oh, wow.
Earlier in the training, not obviously towards this or further in the process this close to Drake, but so this year and a couple weeks ago I did 5 days off.
Okay.
Still getting out and walking or being mobile, if you would, but no physical exertion.
No strength training?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yep.
Wow.
It was a straight 5 days off.
Okay.
And so I kind of went into that thinking, will it be 3 days? Will it be 5? Would I extend to 7? And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, 5 felt good. Like my body felt rested, or as rested as I'm going to be at this point. And then I was also eager, obviously, just to jump right back in.
Yeah.
So that was kind of initially that following week was more of a rest period. And then really the last, I would say 3 to 4-ish, probably 3.5 weeks, I think it's been, post that has really been kind of ramping that mileage back up. So I want to say the first week after that rest period was right around about 20 miles, maybe low 20s.
Okay.
Then kind of getting up into the mid 25, right around there. And then now where I'm topping out at right back to 30, essentially, kind of where I was when we last spoke.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, for listeners out there, typically you haven't done a lot of really big miles. That's not a kind of a part of your training, right? So like a 40-mile week would be really big for you, right?
That would be insane for me. I mean, I can do it, but at this point, I don't see a lot of value in going that high. And I think for me, it's always been, and I've heard this used by others before, it's stacking days, right?
Yep.
Just keep stacking days on top of each other. But yeah, I would say realistically right now that 30 and low 30s that I mentioned in the previous episode are kind of more that comfort zone right now.
Yeah.
And then essentially, and I don't think we'll get too much into detail about this today. If we do, that's great. But then I'll kind of start to bring that down and obviously taper as we get even closer to Drake.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you've increased mileage after your little bit of a respite there. Walk us through other workouts you do. How have the workouts changed in this last few weeks?
Yeah, so one thing that I believe, whether we caught it on camera or you and I were sidebarring about it, is I was really eager to get a time trial in because I wanted a litmus test to kind of see where I was and just get a gauge of confidence level, like, hey, where do I need to be focusing my efforts leading up to Drake? So what I actually ended up doing rather than doing a full-on time trial is that first week back after the rest period, I kind of gave myself an opportunity to ramp up a little bit. And then I ended up doing 2 400s with a minute rest in between.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I actually ended up going, I want to say it was 60 and then 66 is what I did.
Okay.
So felt like realistically like pretty good about that. I don't think it's a true indicator of, all right, now you're a 206, like 800 guy, but it does give me like a good test in terms of my fitness level and where I am.
And where was that relative to where you thought you would be?
I would say realistically that's probably right around what I thought. I actually, full transparency, I was hoping to go a little bit quicker than that.
Yeah.
So more probably, like all things considered, probably a little bit closer to that 203, 204 in total.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like it was good to throw the spikes on and let it rip, because so much of my training has been focused on that aerobic side and building that base and that foundation, that I really haven't built in strategically like too much speed work. So I didn't put like super high expectations on that. It was truly a litmus test. So then beyond that, continued to log miles, some threshold work built in there as well. I know I mentioned the previous episode, yoga and that HIIT training. So really trying to build on the strength side there as well, with a couple sessions a week. And then just last week was the true litmus test time trial.
Okay.
So Jeff and I got on the track, and he's like,
"Hey, indoors, I assume."
Yeah. So we were actually down at UW River Falls on the indoor track. Unfortunately, Mother Nature hasn't exactly cooperated with us recently around here. So that's what it ended up being. And so he's like, "We doing this indoors or outdoors?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm cool with either." I was like, "But I think we'll let Mother Nature kind of dictate it." And
24 inches of snow doesn't help.
Actually, it was pre-snow.
That's right.
So luckily we had a little bit of a melt off, but it was 20 to 25 mile an hour winds that day.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And I didn't necessarily feel like that was going to be, I mean, Drake is going to be what it is, and I'll deal with that on the day, but if I'm in a time trial, like if I can have a little bit more of a controlled environment, I'm going to do that. So we did it on the indoor track, and the way we set it up is I'm like, "Jeff, I think I'm really going to need you more on that second 400.
Yep.
I have no concerns about getting out and hitting where I need to be pace-wise." So I ended up coming through the first 400 right about 63, which is where I wanted to be mentally, at least going into that, because I wanted to make sure I still had enough on the back end. And frankly, I ended up blowing up.
Nice.
It did not go well at all.
Oh, not blowing up.
Yeah, I blew up, so not nice.
Okay, different blow up.
A different blow up. So Jeff jumped in right at the 400 meter mark, and he literally put the gas pedal down, and I had no other gear to go with him, because I told him I'm like, "Hey, I want you to go 60 on that second.
Don't hold back.
Don't hold back. You go, and my job is to stay with you or surpass you." And I couldn't do it. I blew up, and so I ended up after that 63. I think I went 69.
Oh wow!
So I ended up at about 212, and so I've had some reflection time. Post that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. We should. And I know I'm kind of going here, but obviously this is what we're doing. So. But yeah, I ended up 212, and I'm kind of looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what happened." Like I mean, I know in the moment, it was, I had no response in my legs. And so part of the conversation and what I had mentioned a few moments ago was there's been no speed work. There's been none of that. So I'm really leaning more now, which we can talk about, how do I continue to build even stronger on that anaerobic side, and getting more tempo type stuff built in that hasn't been necessarily front of mind up to this point. And again, full transparency, this has been part of the plan. Like I knew that I would build speed back in as we got closer. But now I think it just puts an even heavier focus on that. Now having that litmus test of the 2 400s with that minute rest, and then now running a time trial, that's clearly where I'm lacking right now from a fitness standpoint. So now it's really going to be a focus in these last 4.5 weeks of how do I continue to maintain on that aerobic side, but then really building up and not sacrificing too much there to get that foot speed and that anaerobic where I need it. So
that's awesome. Thank you. I want to kind of pull back and highlight a few things that I think are really important for the master leads that are listening to this. So one, you're very intentional about this process. I mean, I know there's training, but a lot of what you're doing is really benchmarking and running at that in a very objective way, which is super helpful, right?
Yep.
And that helps you kind of, and I want to get a little bit more, dig into like what you've learned and how you're adapting, kind of based on those. I think the second thing is really just this balance between, especially as we age here, the stimulus that we put on our bodies and the time between it, right? So focusing on aerobic is great. And I do this too right now. That's my biggest rate limiter. But I can never get too far away from the speed work, right? Because it gets harder and harder and harder to sort of come back into that. And I think I'd love to kind of get your thinking on that. And would you go back would you approach it the same way? Maybe that'll be like a postmortem for us on this as well, is getting away from some of that speed work. Is that the right choice, right? And maybe that's one of the lessons is it just gets harder to do that as we age. But walk me through a little bit. So those first two, 400s, a pretty good benchmark, felt pretty good about that. What did you change after that? Did you adapt anything, or you're like, man, I'm kind of on mark, just keep rolling with my plan?
Yeah, I would say the two 400s with that minute rest period as that first litmus test. I walked away from that thinking, I think I'm right about where I want or need to be. Right. Again, you always want to go faster.
Because you had the speed. I mean, you had 60-second out there. Like, that wasn't the issue, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't the concern at all. And again, mind you, like, I haven't done any work for the most part on the track, like in terms of throwing the spikes on and doing repeat 200s or 300s, 400s, even 600s, or whatever that looks like. So that was intentional. And so I didn't have a lot of concerns coming off of that. Now, you fast forward and I do a 212. I wouldn't say concerns, but it's like, hey, we really got to get this more dialed in. So I think to your point of, what would I do differently? That's a post-mortem. That's a post-Drake
we'll see
conversation. We will talk about that, because that's the only true way to know is, well, once we get there and perform, did you hit the mark or did you not? And so for right now, I think it's more about staying confident and being really structured within the process of, like, hey, you've done all this work, you've come so far. Now's not the time to blow it up or make drastic changes. Because, and again, this is obviously my opinion, but I don't think making a drastic change right now, even with this 4.5 weeks of time, like, how much of an impact is that really going to have in terms of my body making those adaptations, right? There will be some, right? Like, I can't just stop competing and stop doing those things between now and Drake. But I think I have to stay the course. I have to maintain the plan. And for me, that was build that base, that foundation. And then, because my body, typically from what I know historically, has been really good about being able to ramp up in a quick manner on that anaerobic side. So I know I haven't lost any of it. And I would also add that from doing the yoga that high intensity interval training, I've maintained some of that because it's quick bursts and, there's strength training that's part of that. And I'm also working in strides as part of whether I go on like a tempo run or whatever that might be, or maybe it's an easy run day. So I know it's there. I just have to kind of flip that switch, if you would.
Well, I think that's self-knowledge too. I mean, you bring so much into that, and how you keep the discipline to say, this is the process, I'm following it, and I know that I have this different stimulus response effectively where I can stack in the speed work is I guess probably one of the benefits of training at this age. Like, you have enough miles under your belt to be like, I can hold the course and I think I'm going to be okay. It doesn't guarantee anything. But when you're faced with those checkpoints, those forks in the road, right, you're using that benchmark. What do you do with it? Is it a hard right or is it a stay the course? And for you, it's stay the course.
Yeah, again, that's how I'm approaching it. That's my mentality, and so that's what I'm going to continue to do. And then whatever that end result is, that then I'll have that time to post-mortem or criticize myself and make different changes moving forward. But the other thing that I would add too is, although I know historically with my body that, that speed, once I start building that back in, will be there. I think it's also really important to notate that there's a strategic way to do that. Like, and I'll give you an example. So we were talking right before we went on camera. Today's probably 4 or 5 mile an hour, or 4 to 5 mile run, and then I'm going to throw the spikes on and rip a 300 all out, right? That's kind of one of those first, not litmus tests, but hey, let's start building that back in. And then probably an easy run tomorrow is what I'm imagining. And then Friday is a little bit more all in, where the plan is 400, 500, 600, 500, 400. Okay.
Wow, yeah.
Now, pacing wise and where I'll be on that is, I have a fairly tight range, but it's not going to be this full on like, hey, now I'm just going to go knock out like 10, 12, 200s or whatever that looks like. So I think it is also part being smart about how do we ramp up on that anaerobic side during these last 4.5 weeks.
It's interesting too. I think about like, this is not a technical term, it's kind of my own made up ones, but I feel like there are those like threshold, not in like a threshold, but just like those push workouts that I have every once in a while, like super long, like to start a season, or like the 300, like it just like it hits something inside and it's like, it flips a switch for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, now I'm back. And like it's time to run fast, man. And there's something about it, but you have to like do it. And then you kind of have to back off a second, let your body just be like, all right, you're serious about this. Let's go add some more to it.
Yeah. And as you're mentioning that, it actually made me think about the workout that I ran on Monday. And so, I actually went back and kind of looked through like what I wanted to do and when again, knowing it's time to start ramping up on that side, but still maintaining the aerobic side.
Yeah.
It was 800s.
Wow.
And we're talking like 2-minute recovery in between, but realistically trying to hit anywhere from 230 to 245 pace on each of those
so
800s.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. Like it was one of those where I got through the first one and I'm like, I have 7 more of these. Like, you know what I mean? Like we've all been there. Yeah. And so like mentally I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like this sucks. And so I do the first one and I'm in recovery mode and I want to say I was like 235. So I was like right there. I was hoping to be, right? I was hoping to be 230 on all of them, but I was also still trying to give myself a little bit of grace of like, for me, that's a high volume workout. Like that's a ton. Yeah. That's a ton of work in there, especially at that pace. And so I get through the first one and I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. And so you do the second one and, I fell off a little bit, but I was still like 239, 240. And so as you're going and the point of sharing this is like everything inside of me wanted to stop that workout. Yeah. But then everything on the other side of it was, no, like you're going to do this.
Yeah, right.
Like obviously I care what paces I was hitting, but you're going to do this whether you like it or not. Like it doesn't matter if you're pulling yourself
340,
through at 3,
but you're doing
whatever.
This.
Like you're not quitting.
Yeah.
And so it got to that point and then, realistically, like probably the first 6, I was probably averaging between 240, 245. And then the last 2, I noticed something in my form where, and this is one of the kind of like those learning moments that was totally organic and I wasn't even like expecting it. But because I was like gritting it out, I started to really dial in on like, what more can I be doing to help improve that pace? And I noticed I was like leaning back a lot in the way I was striding in them. So I'm like, no, like you need to lean forward, like body forward, head, everything forward. Like the legs will follow, but then also like stay aggressive, go after it. And I was able to increase my pace and obviously there was a little bit of, all right, dig down, like finish these last 2. But I do think something in my form had kind of triggered where like if I can kind of change that trajectory and then also at the same time like finish, then I was going back to 239 and then 235 to finish the last 2. So I was able to kind of come back to where I was at the front end of that. But nonetheless, like finish the workout, did what I wanted to do. Pacing could have been better. But nonetheless, it was one of those gut check moments of, okay, now like let's continue to push and press and see what I can do. And so that's leading into the 400, 500, 600, 5-4 later this week. And then everything else that I'm going to stack on top of that is I'm really at the point now where I know I need that anaerobic side and I have to balance with the aerobic. But you're going to push yourself to the point of breaking to see what's in the tank. Yeah. And that's kind of my mentality right now.
I mean, there's so much packed into that. It's so powerful to think, and I've been there too, and I'm sure many people listening have also been there, where it's just like you get done with one, and you're like, no way, there is no way. But equally strong on the other shoulder is there's no way I'm not going to do this. And I think that is one of the most fascinating things, especially again as we age here and you're adapting to a body. Sometimes you just have to keep doing it. And I have found so often in my workouts, and I'm, for the mile, it's like, just keep doing the intervals. And kind of like you, my body actually starts to respond. And there's something really magical about it. And it's taught me a ton of different lessons on that front. One of the questions as you're kind of laying out your training and the mentality for it is just a little bit of kind of coming back to the why and the how. So you're training, you've got a good purchase on it, you understand your body, you've done this for a good chunk of your life. You're going to one of the preeminent relays in America, the Drake relays, right, where you won last year. This all feels a little intimidating for, I think, some people, right? How do you go off the couch into the Drake relays? Like, what's mechanically involved with racing at this stage of life? Like, how do you do that, right?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think I had a lot of those similar thoughts leading up to last year's race. Meaning, when I stopped and really thought about it during some downtime, I was like, I haven't raced competitively on a track in over 20 years.
Yeah, isn't that
right?
Yeah.
So like to number one, think it and then say it. It's like, wow, like that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And so, like, have I forgot how to race? Like, do I even know what that entails or how to do it? And so part of that was, well, I had ran some 5Ks competitively over the previous couple of years prior to Drake. So I'm like, well, I at least know what it feels
a little
like
active.
to compete, right? Different style of race, not comparing a 5K road race to an 800 on the blue oval at Drake. But regardless, like, hey, I've put myself out there. But realistically, then what I came back to after it's been 20 years was, well, I need to get in some, right? Like, I got to sign up and start to build that muscle memory of, what does it take when you're rubbing elbows with 10
race day, the mechanics of it, showing up, all the
all of it. So I actually got in on an indoor mile at Bethel. I want to say it was December or January of last year. I think I ran 4:47 that day, which was like, I had no expectations, but it was one of those like, hey, just go, like, just stay in it. And again, we talked about this on the last episode, or you asked, like, hey, have you ever bumped up beyond the 800? And I told you, well, I did a DMR, and I think I ran the 1200 as part of it. But realistically, I think in college, I ran 1 mile outdoors competitively. And so I didn't know what to expect, like stepping on the track at 40 at Bethel. But I think I held my own. Like, I went out there and I know I competed, and I actually think I surprised myself a little bit that day. So there was that. And then ultimately, it was probably, I think, 2 weeks before Drake, I actually signed up unattached to run down at Minnesota State Mankato. So I got in the slow heat with
a bunch of college guys.
And I remember my neighbor was there because their daughter actually runs at Minnesota State. And I'm like, all right, well, I got my wife and my kids, and I got the neighbor and his family, and I definitely can't blow up and get smoked by these college dudes. And I actually went out and I won my heat.
Nice.
I won that heat and went 2:02 that day.
Wow.
And that's faster than what I ended up running at Drake 2 weeks later when I ran 2:05. So for me, it was a little bit of, you just got to go, like, put your name in the hat and do it.
If Drake was the ultimate, you said, listen, I got to at least get a few reps in.
Yeah.
So some advice for anybody listening would be, pick your race. That's always good. And then have a few trials. Like, just go out and in slow pressure, maybe not even the race that you did, right? The mile at Bethel isn't even the target 800. But it's just getting you back in the frame of mind, right? It's kind of getting you back in the game. And that seemed to have worked for you.
Yeah, it did. And again, that was advice, or I didn't mention this, but from Jeff is, a little bit of me is like, why am I running miles at Bethel? Like, put me in an 800. And it was more about that conditioning, right? Yeah. It was more about that building the base, at least my understanding. Jeff may have a different answer, but it was to race, and it was also to get out there and not be so all the chips are on the 800. Yeah. Like, just go compete in this race, because it's still going to help you from a body of work standpoint.
I mean, you could have run a bunch of workouts to get that, but adding in the layer of the race dynamic takes some of the pressure off that actual day of racing, right? And I think that's important too. I think about my journey too as a similar, reality is like I haven't raced in 20 years, and I don't like to fail. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so getting out there for me and just doing races is something that's actually really important, irrespective of the distance, right? Yeah. Even if it doesn't even even if it's just like, this is just part of your training, but getting that out of my head has been really important too. And I think anybody who's been out of the game for a little while, just saying like, go try a few. Yeah. Low risk and go.
Yeah, I think you hit it a couple minutes ago, and you did a good job of summarizing what I was trying to say, is that you do need to, number one, you got to start, I think, with a plan and build up to it.
Yep.
But once you get to a certain point, right, it's going to be different for everybody. There's never going to be this perfect moment, is what I'm trying to say, of, all right, well, now I'm ready to go run that mile at Bethel. Yeah. Or now I'm ready to go run that
That's
800.
A misnomer. Yeah.
Like, don't sit around and wait for that perfect time. Just commit to it. Like, say, hey, I'm going to get a month, 2 months, whatever that time frame is of training.
Yeah.
And then when I get to that point, then I'm going to go race. I'm going to try it, because that's the only way of truly knowing, in my opinion. It's no different than, I mean, it's different, but what I'm trying to say is that 400 with the minute rest with 400, or that 800 meter time trial with Jeff last week, there's no perfect time to do it. Yep. It's a matter of, you just commit to it, you rip the Band-Aid off, and there's only one way to find out where I'm at, and that's to lace them up and go get it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're fearless in that regard, and I think that obviously, plays well for you. One of the other questions I had after our session last time was a little bit into not just like, okay, how do you get back into the racing side of things, but how do you're in sales, you're active, you're traveling, you're trying to do, something really exceptional, go back and defend your title at Drake. How do you manage those two things? Because they seem like they come into conflict, right?
They definitely do. And I think that what you're describing is probably part of what I was alluding to in the previous episode, when you're like, hey, were you just sitting around one day and like beer belly and and then you're like, okay, I want to change this. And so I know we joke and we can laugh about that, but part of it was, it's like, oh man, I'm so busy with the kids and with work and these other things, because those are real. Like, it's balancing the different parts of your life. But I think what it came back to was, like, when I travel and being in sales, and what I do is, there's no excuse to not stay committed to the process. So whether I'm on the road or I'm in my normal routine in Hudson, like where I'm either going to the office or I'm working from home, whatever that might be, I have to adapt to that environment. So like, for example, I was down in the Pensacola area just last week traveling for work, and that comes with like, hey, I'm here for work, but I got to get up a little bit earlier on those days to make sure that I get that workout in. So whether that's a threshold run, or if I'm doing tempo work that day, or if it's an easy run, whatever that might be. It's also to the point where, like, I'm doing recon. I remember when I was in Tampa last year, or maybe it was towards the end of last year. And I'm like, hey, what local tracks are in the area where I can bring the spikes and go get my 200 repeats in, or whatever that might be. And so I think what I'm ultimately trying to say is, it's being very planful about it, and focused on, just because my environment is changing this week doesn't mean the plan is changing.
I think that's so important. And, having that constraint, having that goal out there, I think is absolutely essential. I think about too the amount of work travel that I've done, and it sometimes it can be like it just gets to be a grind, and if you're not prepared for it. And I think one of the best things about now training for, the mile and having that out there very clear is it gives a sense of purpose and almost adventure to some of these trips, right?
Yeah.
To your point, you're like Googling Google Maps, like where's the best track? Like, Florida right now in Minnesota sounds pretty awesome,
Right.
and some of the best runs I've had have been in these new places. And you're just like, you get to go learn a new place, but not framing it as like I have to. But like now I can fill some of the dead space that comes with travel, where it can be a little bit lonely. You get off your routine. But that's actually been one of the surprising aspects of like, yeah, it's hard. And like if you have jet lag and things happen, but that also teaches some resiliency there too, where it's like, you know what, I'm not going to get my workout in today. And that's okay. I'll figure out how to do that. You know what I mean? And,
I do.
And I think that's been really healthy kind of for me in integrating this into a work lifestyle. And I think that's just that positive reframe of like, actually, this could be really cool. And you could have a really awesome, session at the new track in Pensacola or wherever you're running.
Yeah, I think it's well said on your end. And I firmly believe it really comes back to the mentality around it, right?
Totally.
I've done it before where I'm going on this work trip and it's like, well, I'm going to go out to dinner with the team tonight and I'm not going to want to get up early tomorrow, especially if I decide I want to have a beverage, that or whatever it is. But realistically, what I kept coming back to is those were excuses to not stay committed or be bought in on what's the ultimate goal.
Right.
And that for me is more important. It's balance. It's like I can still go to those dinners.
You can still socialize and be present and whatnot.
But guess what? I'm going to get my butt up when the alarm goes off at 5:30 or whatever that is. And then I have the opportunity or I get to run in Pensacola or Tampa that's 70, 75 degrees rather than 15 degrees and snow's blowing sideways up in Hudson today.
Yeah, exactly.
So it really is just trying to change that mentality to I get to do this. I want to do this. And don't get me wrong, like stepping out of the hotel in Pensacola and getting hit with that blanket of humidity of 70 degrees even at 6 a.m., that was different. Like I wasn't planning for that, but you just adapt and you figure it out because, again, it's part of the process.
Yeah, it's totally part of the process. Okay, well, let's go back to the process. Sounds like you're doing a lot more speed work. Walk us through, the next 4 weeks as we get ready for Drake. What's on tap?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the workout that I'll be looking at today, easy tomorrow, and then 400, 500, 600, 500, 400 on Friday. That'll probably set me up for maybe a rest day on Saturday, and then just talking a little bit more big picture in those next couple weeks leading up. It's really trying to probably not necessarily come down on mileage, but more, what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm trying to repurpose what I would typically do for longer runs or heavier mileage and translate that more into tempo work and really strike that balance now. So not sacrificing what I've built from an aerobic capacity standpoint, but knowing that some of that is going to come down a little bit as I build in the speed work and the anaerobic side. And just, again, trying to strike that balance and then also recovery in there. So realistically, it's going to be a lot of 400 work, 600 work, probably even working up to 800 and then beyond, where I'll do maybe some 1,000-meter work in there as well, just to get beyond that feeling of the 800, just to make sure the body can acclimate to that properly. But speed work with repeat 200s will be built in there as well.
Ask about that. Okay.
And then also just, again, making sure I'm still hitting my mileage, but again, repurposing it into maybe a different body of work rather than just going out for a 10-mile long run, if you would.
So one of the other things you mentioned was, big goal right now is stay healthy. How do you feel like you're doing on that front?
Yeah, I actually, other than a lower back thing that kind of popped up a couple weeks ago, really good for the most part. Like I've struggled with some hip flexor type stuff in the past, which really just hasn't lent well into training where I've had to take some periods of time off. But right now, in terms of physically, I feel really good from a health perspective.
Nice.
And it's a good question because it has really, when I mentioned a few moments ago about like, I really want to push the envelope right now in terms of what can I do and kind of try to max myself, especially on the anaerobic side, is until my body says, hey, like, no, we're not going to do that too much anymore. I want to get to that point and feel it because the body is holding up really well right now. So I think I have capacity to do that.
Okay, so you've been methodical about it. You obviously have a lot of experience in this. You've already won at Drake. What's kind of like top of mind for you? What are you most concerned about? What are you most excited about here at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm most excited about the opportunity to lace them up and get back out there on the blue oval again. I mean, it's we talked about, my roots and being from Iowa and everything on the previous episode, and so that doesn't die. Like that always lives and burns in there, is the opportunity to get back out there. And I would say the biggest concern is just making sure I've left myself enough time to build up and hit peak on that anaerobic side by the time April 24th hits. It's not like I'm running back the exact plan that I did last year.
Yeah.
So it's trying to stay very focused and disciplined in it, where at the same time, really putting faith in this is going to work and I'm going to be where I need to be once Friday rolls around on April 24th. So.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's always a pleasure to chat. It's awesome to kind of follow your path and trajectory here. It's great that you're in good health, great in good spirits, and I look forward to touching base with you shortly.
Yeah, sounds good. Again, appreciate the opportunity. Always good to chat, and looking forward to the race at Drake.
Yeah.